Okay. Let's see, where did we stop? Oh, here, on glands. So, types of glands, I don't get too hung up in this. Serous glands make a watery fluid. Mucus glands secrete mucus. The stuff itself is called mucus, M-U-C-U-S, where if it's pertaining to a gland, like you're talking about a mucus gland, it's spelled O-U-S. Mixed exocrine glands secrete both serous and mucus. Like I said, I'm not too hung up in that. Just remember that glands are derived from epithelial tissue. Okay, so let's talk about the modes of secretion of an exocrine gland. Exocrine, remember, goes through a duct onto an epithelial surface. So these three types over here: Marocrine, Apocrine, and Holocrine. Those are your modes of secretion. Those are your modes of secretion for glands, exocrine glands. Okay. So let's take them one at a time. So Marocrine. Marocrine, basically it just releases its secretions by exocytosis. So remember the way the little vesicles can just fuse with the cell membrane and then go on and then empty their products out. It doesn't hurt the cell at all, right? You can do this all day long as you're hydrated. See, like here's an example: salivary gland. As long as you're nice and hydrated, you can make saliva all day long. It doesn't hurt those cells at all. Sweat glands, same thing. Those are Marocrine modes of secretion. Exocytosis that we were just talking about, that's just spilling your product out of the cell. Exo, think exit, exiting the cells. So the vesicle fuses to the inside of the phospholipid bilayer there, and then it releases its contents into the extracellular fluid. Now, here's a different mode of secretion called apocrine. Apocrine is a little bit different than, say, your little vesicles with the products end up in the top of your cell, the apical surface of the cell. Then that apex will break down and release everything that's in there. It doesn't really hurt the cell. It's going to take it a while to be ready to go again, but it doesn't kill the cell. So mammary glands, another way you could also call them lactiferous glands, they use this mode of secretion. Holocrine, that's where the entire cell ends up lysing and bursting, and everything that's in that cell goes out the little duct onto an epithelial surface. In this case, it's a hair shaft. So everything, nucleus, nuclei, mitochondria, lysosomes, centrioles, everything that's in there ends up in that secretion. So that's why your hair will get oily after a while if you don't wash it. It's because these sebaceous glands are constantly putting their product onto here. So Holocrine, can it go straight up to the skin? I think so. It doesn't always have to be on a hair shaft from what I understand. But every picture I see, it has them emptying onto a hair. Okay. So let's see if I can make the screen a little larger. There you go. So that's pretty much ended our epithelial. Remember our 4 tissue types? We had epithelial, we had neural, we had muscle, and then the catch-all group, connective tissue. So now we're going to go to the tough one, connective tissue. So this is kind of a cool little flow chart here. So they divide connective tissue into 3 different major types. Connective tissue proper, that's what I think of as just regular old ordinary connective tissue. Fluid connective tissues, and then also the really tough stuff here, supporting connective tissues. Let's do the easy one first. So think about how I could ask a question. What are the three major categories of connective tissue? That would be connective tissue proper, fluid connective tissues, and supporting connective tissues. So fluid, easy, blood and lymph. Okay. Remember, it's kind of a catch-all category. If you don't know where to put it under connective tissue, and you're probably right. Anyway, they consider blood a connective tissue. Lymph, they do too. So the good news is I can't put a slide of lymph up for you to look at because it'd pretty much be it'd be like looking at a slide of water. Not much in there. Every now and then you might see a lymphocyte or something floating around. So yeah, never, ever, ever under a microscope call it lymph. Later on I could show you a lymph node that's on another test, but that's totally different. Okay, blood, pretty easy. Everybody's seen either drawings or microscope slides of red blood cells, and probably have some white blood cells and platelets mixed in there. So I'll show you those later on. But anyway, boom, you're done. Blood and lymph. Those are your two fluid connective tissues. Let's go to the next easiest one. Supporting connective tissues. Bone and cartilage. Bone and cartilage. Let's do the easy one first. Bone. Now, technically, there's two types of bone. There's spongy and compact. We're not even doing that. This is intro, remember? So really, the only slide I'm going to show you is going to be compact bone. It's very, very, very easy to identify. Almost looks like a tree with when you cut a tree across, you can see the rings in it. Kind of looks like that. So if you see that, boom, it's compact bone. You don't even have to say compact bone. I say, what tissue is this? Be specific. All you have to do is say bone, right? Because we're not going into spongy bone and compact bone technically on this, just bone for now. Okay? Cartilage. It gets a little more complicated here. Got three different types of cartilage. You have hyaline cartilage. That's most of the cartilage in your body, by the way. You got some really tough stuff, hyaline cartilage. Basically, that's a mixture of cartilage and collagen fibers, right? And then you have elastic cartilage. And that's a mixture of basically hyaline cartilage and elastic fibers. Where can you find these things? If somebody hands you a slide of hyaline cartilage, it's probably trachea. Best place to get it, right? It's in other places, like on the ends of long bones and other places. But the easiest place to get it for a slide, like if you had a mouse, would be like a trachea of a mouse, right? Fibrocartilage, really, really tough stuff. So it's got collagen fibers mixed in with it, okay? Where's a good place to find this? Remember, I can ask questions like that. Intervertebral disc, right? And the pubic symphysis, right, in between the pubic bones and the pelvic region. That's another great place. So if somebody hands you a slide and it says fibrocartilage, probably it's going to be either from an intervertebral disc or a pubic symphysis. Elastic cartilage. Pretty easy to identify because you'll see those black or dark purple fibers running every which way, and those are elastic fibers, and they'll be all embedded in the cartilage. It's a mixture basically of hyaline cartilage and elastic fibers. Where's a good place to find it? Ear. The ear is probably a great place. Could be the nose, but 9 times out of 10, somebody hands you a slide and it says elastic cartilage. It's probably an ear of some type. Okay, let's go over here. This is what I think of as regular old connective tissue. Connective tissue proper. It's divided into loose and dense. Okay, obviously those names are explanatory. Let's look at dense. Dense irregular and dense regular. Here's the good news. On this intro test, I'm never going to show you dense regular because it looks almost exactly like smooth muscle. So if you see something that looks like smooth muscle, it's smooth muscle. I'm not trying to be tricky. Okay? Dense irregular. Those collagen fibers, instead of being lined up, together, going in the same direction like it does in dense regular, that they're going in all different directions. Where's a good place to find dense irregular? Well, it's in a lot of places, but scalp is a really, really good place. And then that gives you some clues because you usually have hair follicles in there, And so anyway, if somebody hands you a slide that says dense irregular, it's probably scalp, right? Dense regular. If somebody hands you a slide of that, it's probably from a tendon, like a tendon that connects to a muscle. But like I said, not going to be responsible for that one under a microscope on this test. So let's go over to loose. Okay. These are kind of easy. Adipose, fat, basically. Let's do that one first. It's going to look like soap bubbles. I'll show you some pictures of all these things in a little bit. It's going to look like soap bubbles. Whoop, not yet. It's going to look like soap bubbles. And every now and then you'll see a nucleus. And they're not going to be, unless they stain them specially, they're going to be white. They're going to be clear. Every now and then you'll see a nucleus pushed out to the outside because there's so much lipid inside of that cell that it's pushing it to the outside. So where can you find adipose? Lots of places. Behind the eyes, around the kidneys, under the skin, buttocks, there's a lot of places. So anyway, it can be even mixed in with a skeletal muscle, the way muscle gets marbling, like when you cut a steak open, you can see the fat in between some of the muscle sometimes. So anyway, I'll show you pictures of that later. Areolar. Probably not heard of this one, but it's super, super distinct. It's going to look like a little kid got a graphite pencil and just drew lines all over your slide. There's going to be pink collagen fibers in there too, but it's very, very distinct. I'll show you this. Where can you find it? Lots and lots of places. It's even mixed in with fat almost every time. But if somebody just wants to hand you a plain old areolar slide with no fat mixed in, they probably got that out of the lungs, right? For some reason, that's a great place. So if you took a little cut of lung and you dissolved everything in it except the connective tissue, you would leave behind a lot of areolar tissue. So that's probably where you'll find it. It's in, like I said, it's in other places too. It's in the dermis, it's in the fat, and I'll show you what I'm looking for. Reticular, this will make more sense when you can see it, but it provides a framework for organs. So liver, spleen, things like that. If you dissolved everything out of those and just left behind connective tissue, it would be a lot of reticular tissue. Okay, and that one, they call it the cherry blossom slide. So they can stain it two ways. They can stain it golden brown or they stain it pink. I like the pink slide. And it looks like the little branches with the little cherry blossoms on it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? It's like, oh, yeah. And then you never miss that one. So that's the nice thing. None of these look alike at all. Okay, remember, it looks like a graphite pencil scratched all over this slide. This one's going to look like soap bubbles, and this one's going to look like cherry blossoms. Let's talk about fibers for a minute and then before we show you any pictures. So collagen fibers, reticular fibers, and elastic fibers. So these are all produced by, guess what? Fibroblasts. Okay, so collagen fibers, reticular fibers, elastic fibers are all made by these cells called fibroblasts. Okay, the collagen fibers generally stain pink, and we talked about those. Reticular are going to stain dark, and elastic's going to stain dark, and they're going to be probably kind of squiggly looking. Okay, here's the kicker. These reticular fibers, technically, they are made of collagen. So they are collagen fibers. They're just tiny, tiny collagen fibers, and they gave them their own name. Okay, so this is, so look here. Here's a tendon, and they cut that out, and they're showing you over here. And you look at that, and you go, I'll be darned. Looks just like smooth muscle almost. So I would never do this to you on a first test because they look too similar. Okay, but you should know where can you find dense, regular connective tissue. And that's what this is. And that would be, a tendon would be a good place. Okay. Here are my reticular fibers. Remember I said if you just remember reticular tissue forms a framework for organs. So there's a liver, and they're showing you basically everything got dissolved out of it. And they're showing you the connective tissue left behind. So see, it looks like little branches, a little dark. Oh, the little dark, they look like limbs or branches on a cherry tree. And then, unfortunately, this one's stained kind of golden brown. It's got a little bit of pink to it. And you can see the little cherry blossoms here. They're not zoomed in good enough to where you can see them. Over here, the artist drew them better. And I have some better slides that I'll put up on the review. But yeah, you see the little cherry blossoms scattered all around. Spleen, going to be the same thing. Remember, it provides a framework for organs. So reticular fibers made by fibroblasts. Collagen fibers made by fibroblasts. Elastic fibers made by fibroblasts. So I'm probably not going to show you an elastic ligament. This backbones, spinal cords in there. But you got a lot of elastic fibers in these ligaments because, you do a lot of twisting and turning and bending. These have to be able to, go with the flow, basically. So no, I wouldn't do this one to you on a microscope slide here. Not on this test. We're just talking about what if you cut down, say you cut down into the dermis, what kind of cells can you find down there in the connective tissue proper? Well, fibroblasts, obviously, because it's making your connective tissue fibers, your collagen fibers and all. Fixed macrophages. Remember, phage means to eat. So macrophage, that's white blood cell that can destroy pathogens, bacteria, viruses. So yeah, they can sit in one spot and they're called fixed macrophages, but they can also crawl around and those are mobile, right, or free macrophages. Adipocyte, that's just another name for a cell, a fat cell, right? Oh, by the way, as long as we're talking about this, what kind of cell, stores lipid? You go adipocyte. What kind of cell makes collagen fibers? You go fibroblast. What kind of cell makes bone, by the way? Osteoblast. What kind of cell makes cartilage? Chondroblast. So make sure you write those things down. So blast generally means it's a young cell. Osteoblast and chondroblast, they develop these little, almost like little bubbles that they live in, little houses, and then they call them cytes, C-Y-T-E-S, like osteocyte, chondrocyte. Those are older, okay? I'll show you those in a minute. Mesenchymal cells, that's just stem cells down in there. Melanocytes, there's a few maybe scattered into connective tissue proper, but most of your melanocytes are above the basement membrane on your epidermis. If you cut down below that, yeah, you might see a few scattered around, but most melanocytes are above the basement membrane from what I understand. Free macrophages we talked about. Don't worry about mast cells. Don't worry about lymphocytes. Don't worry about macrophages. We ain't even talked about any of that stuff. That's another test. Loose connective tissue provides cushioning. So we were talking about areolar, right? We were talking about adipose, and we were talking about reticular. So where's a good place to find areolar if it's not out of the lung? Yeah, it's in a lot of other places. Dermis, around blood vessels, nerves and joints, around those. Adipose, a lot of places, behind the eyes, around the kidneys, in the hypodermis, under the skin, lots of places. Reticular, liver, kidney, spleen. Um, if you dissolve all that all the cells out of there and leave behind the connective tissue, it'll mainly be reticular tissue. Here's the little drawing I was showing you. It looks like a kid took a graphite pencil, and they did put one fat cell in here. But out of the lung, usually there's no fat. And so you can see it. And when you see the real one, it looks even way better than what the artist draw. Here's the soap bubbles, and I can actually show you some better ones than these. These don't, they kind of give you the good soap bubble effect, but I can show you better. And this would be, sometimes they do stain the fat yellow or red, but very rarely. It's usually just going to be clear like this. And here's your cherry blossom slide, the reticular. And I'll show you a better one of that once we get to a review. Okay. So we talked about that, dense irregular and dense regular and where they're found, right? And there's your dense regular. I'm not going to give you elastic ligaments. And here's dense irregular. They just stained it weird. It's normally pink, but you can see it's going every which way. Your collagen fibers are going every which way. They're not lined up like they are in a tendon. So this is dense irregular. This is dense regular. There's blood. No one misses that slide. There's a couple of white blood cells in there. But I go, what tissue is this under the microscope? Be specific. Blood. If you said fluid connective tissue, I'd probably give it to you, or at least a half a point. Because remember, you have lymph and blood for fluid connective tissue. So if I say be specific, say blood. We talked about fibrocartilage, where you can find it. We talked about elastic cartilage, where you can find it. Fibrocartilage in the pubic symphysis, intervertebral disc. Elastic cartilage, the ear, the nose, right? Cartilage, hyaline cartilage itself, it's probably trachea. I don't know why. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I put it on there. But between the ribs and the sternum, also a good place. On the ends of your bones, long bones, another good place, right? Okay. Here's a cartilage. Hyaline cartilage. Look how nice and smooth and purple it is. There's no fibers. These are the lacuna I was telling you about, the little bubbles that the chondrocytes can live in. And I don't know why they do this, but they tend to go two of them together like this and this and this. And so sometimes they look like owl eyes, like the bird. So when you see that and it's nice and smooth in the background, that background's called the ground substance, or I think they also call it the matrix sometimes, the connective tissue. Either, it has ground substance or matrix, and in this case, it's this firm, this gel like, it's pretty firm cartilage. Here is elastic cartilage. You still got chondrocytes, right? But look at all the dark purple and black elastic fibers everywhere in here. Once you see it, this is a great slide. You're not going to miss it. I'll show you that on a review too. Fibrocartilage, they did a good job drawing this. So here's your blue. I love it when they stain blue in fibrocartilage. You can't always go by the color, but it really makes it nice. A lot of fibrocartilage, for some reason, they stain them blue instead of pink. And so there's your collagen fibers made by fibroblasts. There's a lacuna. It's not going to be too many lacuna in there, but they'll be scattered around. Okay. And so where can you find that? Well, intervertebral disc, just like I said. Could be a pubic symphysis. Okay. We did these. So let's look at some real slides here. Oh, that's dense irregular. So that could be way down deep in the scalp. I'm not seeing any hair follicles or anything, but we're zoomed pretty far in. So you might not see those. Look at the way the collagen fibers are going every which way, right? If you do see some nuclei scattered around in there, those are probably nuclei to fibroblast. I love both of these slides. They're about A+. This is perfect as you can get. Areolar. Looks like a kid drew all over it with a graphite pencil. Then if you see those dark sorry, those pink, that's probably some collagen fibers, and then you got these fibers here. You know, they're tinier. And plus you can have elastic fibers. So see the way that's squiggly, that could be elastic. Here's adipose fat cells, beautiful, look like soap bubbles. Every now and then you'll see a nucleus, like I guess that's probably one there. Like I said, you're not going to always see the nuclei because these cells are pretty big. And then when you cut across them, what are the odds you're going to cut through the nucleus? Not very well, not very good. You're going to just see mainly a bunch of soap bubbles. Every now and then you'll see a nucleus, but that's fat, adipose. Beautiful hyaline cartilage. See, it's nice and smooth and purple, and I love the way they go together here, the owl eyes, right? And smooth muscle, we already did these. That smooth muscle cut two different ways. There's a neuron. Okay, so that should finish up that PowerPoint C. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and quit recording and post this for you. All right.